Okay. Hello, everyone. It's me again. Is everyone? Hello? Right, we're going to start now the final session of this conference. So we've got this panel session, which is going to be discussing, the title is Channeliscation. Useful or overkill? Sorry, that wasn't a great start. We'll see if it improves. So this is an opportunity. So we've heard a lot about state channels today and payment channels yesterday and other off-chain solutions. And so this is an opportunity to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and see how these techniques fit in, why they're necessary, where they're useful. So we're very lucky to be joined by these 5 incredible panelists here. So I'm going to hand over to them to introduce themselves briefly, and then we will kick off with the first question. So Liam, do you want to go first?
So my name is Liam Horne. I talked just an hour or two ago. I'm one of the co-founders of L4. I'm working on counterfactual, and I kind of play an interesting role in this ecosystem where I'm a kind of a researcher and engineer and also organizer of events and also investor. And so I kind of see the whole landscape of this technology, and I think maybe that could be useful for the point of view here.
My name is Jeff Coleman. Liam is my colleague at L4. I'm at L4 as well. I'm firmly in the researcher role. I've been very interested in state channels, particularly for the last 3 years. And it's been fun to watch the development of the ecosystem. When I first used to give talks about state channels, people would go, oh, that's nice, let us know when it's ready. But now we see there's a whole room full of people who are really interested in second layer off-chain solutions like this, and it's wonderful to see the transformation.
My name is Stefan Dziembowski. I come from the University of Warsaw in Poland. I'm a cryptographer. I was doing cryptography all my life, and I'm interested in cryptocurrencies for a couple of years now. I had some early papers on doing lotteries using smart contracts, lotteries on Bitcoin, and for 2 years now I'm working on state channels together with Sebastian, and we are responsible for this project called Perun.
Okay, hello, yes. I'm Sebastian Faust from TU Darmstadt, Technical University of Darmstadt. Also professor, working in cryptography, and have been doing research on mainly on provable security, so like the UC model and things like this. And now in the last 2 years, well, together with Stefan and some of the like Christina and Lisa, and also student of Stefan, who is now in Google, we were developing this network called Perun, which we are trying to now also implement together with some companies, and yeah, we are very excited about this topic.
Hey, so I'm Iddo, so I'm now in Cornell Tech in New York City, and about state channels, I did this sprites work together with Patrick and the other co-authors, and mainly Andrew Miller, and also the PISA paper that was presented here, and other small projects related to state channels like this paralysis proofs, and also other research related to cryptocurrencies, but that was mainly about state channels.
Cool, thank you everyone. So the first question is going to be a question about the applications of state channels. So I guess what I'd like to know is, for each of you, what do you find to be one of the your most compelling application that needs state channels? So I'll ask you to try and stick to just one each, and then if possible, try not to repeat something that someone else has said as far as you can do that. Do I have a volunteer to go first? That's the easy position. Anyone?
Gaming.
Go.
I can say that I encountered this question, and I think it is a little bit unfair, because the first thing that you should ask is what is the application of just smart contract on chain? If you have a good answer to this, then probably you will also get a good answer for the state channels that are off chain. So, and this is a question in itself. So for example, I was in another conference a couple of months ago when Nick Szabo was talking about smart contracts, and he was asked what are good applications for smart contracts, and one of the answers was actually the smart contract that enforces the off-chain transactions. So it's a little circular, but at least for payment, no, it makes sense for payment at least, right? So the smart contract enforces off-chain payments. So this is an example, but it's still not an example of a state channel, just for the use case in the end is just payments.
Yes, so I have two immediate applications in mind. So one was, as Sebastian said, gaming, so poker, what Iddo was presenting, or simple lotteries. The other application is things like secure file transmission, like torrent-like applications. So the problem with both of these applications is that they are on like borderline of something legal, right? Especially the torrent application. So that's not what I'm really working. Like, I mean, I wrote some papers on this, but I wouldn't think about like making a startup out of it. So other applications besides of these two that I mentioned, I think it's what Iddo said. So we need to think about applications for smart contracts first, and then channelize these applications or whatever you call it. Yeah, it is a big open problem mostly because all the smart contracts that you would like to use in real life, they require oracles, right? So there is this question of, you know, someone translating the physical world to the digital world. But I recently talked to several companies, including like companies that do like electroenergetic things, like selling energy, distributed energy markets. And they were always telling me that, yes, we want to have a blockchain, we want to have a blockchain, we want to have smart contracts. And I was really trying to, like challenging them to convince me if they can come up with some convincing use cases. And actually, they at the end convinced me that smart contracts are useful. So things like, you know, making contracts for the future energy consumption, like, you know, I make a contract if the weather in June gets, the temperature gets higher than something, then I will have energy supplied and things like this. Of course, it requires oracles, but it looks like you can find some useful and practical use cases.
Okay. Liam or Jeff, go for it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was just going to say that the question, like, if we want to get into the depth of the question, if we make the assumption that smart contracts are useful, I'd say the most important thing is that from a usability point of view, like it's kind of like asking like how will TCP/IP be useful for the internet? Effectively, like this is the technology that makes all the things that we're saying can be secure actually usable by end users, because ultimately when you have standards around these things and they're built into the browser and they're built into mobile clients, all of a sudden now it's just a typical normal web experience. And we can start providing some of these applications that for smart contracts in general with dead simple UIs that everyday people can understand. And there's very few ways of doing that without this kind of technology because of the instant finality of state channels.
So it's sort of reclaiming the normal web-based.
Yeah,
it's to expect.
the application within this community is it's the thing that's going to help us go mainstream because it'll actually make applications usable for everyday people, such that companies can build products and services that can actually make this stuff useful in society.
Cool.
Well, I'm close to the end, so lots of good ideas have already been presented, and I'm left sweeping up. But one of the things that I think is part of the story of what makes blockchain smart contracts and state channels interesting is the story of automation. We're looking at a world where increasingly computers and software are participants in our ecosystem. So simple examples about that are we're thinking about money, like computers being able to pay computers. But when we extend beyond just financial examples, there are lots of things that are about permissions, authorizations, and instructions that we mostly moderate. If we look at organizations, we moderate with written policies, basically language that tells other humans what to do. If we want computers to participate in these ecosystems, we need to re-express that format in a way that's automatically processable. So one of the things that I think is most interesting to use state channels for is just explicit definition of policy. So this could be everything from a policy of like, how do you get into my house? Like if I've got a smart lock to, how do I turn on my car? It could be management of assets, like what do I use my assets for? What have I prepaid for? What can I be subscribed to? How do warranties work? All these details. And more broadly, when I go out into the world and I interact with so many different systems and organizations, We look at things like privacy policies and terms of service. There's no way I can read all that. It's already inaccessible to me in language. But if this was expressed in some sort of automated form and I could express a policy where every interaction with something is negotiated, where I say, I'm only interacting with you if you have a privacy policy that fits these abstract criteria, and to make that automatic so that we're not forced to try and enforce that through something like human willpower to not use a cool website or something, but like it literally won't even show up if it doesn't match the policy. These are all things we can implement with state channels, where we're combining economic, policy, different aspects of our life in ways that are explicit and automated.
Cool. Okay, so I guess, so we've heard a lot about state channels this weekend. There are also a load of other different scalability solutions that are currently being worked on. So Plasma is obviously a very popular one that most people have heard of. There's also work going on in sharding and that stuff. Like, where do you see state channels fitting into that ecosystem? Like, is it the case that once Plasma is built, then state channels are pointless? Is it the case that once we have sharding and the blockchain scales, like, we won't need these things anymore? Or do you think there will always be a compelling use for state channels? Does anybody?
So you can combine the solutions, right? So if you make Plasma that allows smart contracts, then you can build channels on top of it, right? It's delicate. You need to think about several things, but thankfully, to run Connecti, we have universal composability, so we can compose things securely, and so you can use these two things at the same time. So Plasma has the disadvantage that you need to wait for the confirmation, and channels are immediate. Now, on the other hand, with channels, you need blocking money, so this is a disadvantage. But you can combine these two things, and you can have like smooth choice between how much money you want to block and how much you are willing to wait. Right? So I think ultimately we will be using both one on top of another.
So you see Plasma and state channels as being complementary technologies with...
Yes, complementary and combined together at the end.
So Plasma could presumably give you cheaper on-chain deposits.
Yes.
And the state channels give you the instant finality that you don't get with Plasma.
Yes.
Sebastian?
So I also think there are like different trade-offs. I mean, like Stefan said already, some are like instantaneous, some are like take less collateral and so on. So it depends very much on the use case, I think, for which kind of these solutions you want to use in the end. So depending on this, I guess it would be ideally to have a big ecosystem of different type of scalability solutions, and then depending on your application, you choose the right one, and hopefully it will be easily also to implement, and we have secure implementations and protocols that can be combined such that we have the best of the world.
Yeah, this is similar to what I wanted to say. So state channels are not going away because, like, if you want these instantaneous transactions, so you can do it off-chain in the optimistic case. So in the optimistic case, it will always be better than something like sharding that is done on-chain. It would never be as fast in terms of latency and so on. On the other hand, it's not like a silver bullet. So state channel, you need to lock your money, and there is some opportunity cost that might be associated with that. So if you have a good solution for on-chain scalability, it's good to have in general. It's not, you shouldn't just assume that state channel will solve all your problems.
Great. So I'm going to ask, I've got one more prepared question, and after that we'll go to the audience for a few questions. So like use this time to think what your question is going to be. In the meantime, so the final prepared question I have is, so it's about the balance of research versus making things accessible. So like we've got some state channel solutions that sort of already work. Let's take, for example, the Perron virtual channels. That works for two parties. There are sort of two different paths you could take. You could either like make those as usable as possible, or you could invest in making them n-party compatible. And that sort of, those choices exist for a lot of things across the technology. So I guess my question is like, how do you see that balance versus like where state channels are today? Do you think that the majority of the work now should be taking what's already there and making it usable by developers? Or do you think there's still a lot of kind of fundamental research to be done before we get to the point where it's usable? Jeff or Liam, do you want to?
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions on this one. I think fundamentally this is something that's going to be happening in parallel. Like it's definitely the case that there should be people doing research in the deep areas that can advance state channels, but at the same time, it's definitely the case that there should be web frameworks and there should be like walls that supports channels and there should be standards for this stuff, and we should be constantly collaborating at each layer. And ideally, we can get into our workflow where basically we're constantly coming up with new research, and there's a nice kind of pipeline to take that best research and translate it into real proof of concepts, which then can be implemented and add the frameworks, and then it can go into real UIs and applications. And ideally, we can be in the stage where that is kind of like just how you ship a product. It's the ecosystem is shipping a product to the industry, to the potential consumers of all this stuff. So we're not there at all right now. Like for example, when I first started learning about state channels, it took me like 2-3 weeks every day, all day, Jeff just lecturing me to even figure out what's going on. And I'd probably like done that the same to the people that we've employed at L4. It's an extraordinarily complicated topic, but if we can get it all written down with clear reasoning behind every step along the way, from like the research at the core of this up to like actual working products, and it's this documented, this processes, then the shipping of a product I kind of described into the industry we'll have that in the same way that right now the cryptocurrency research industry is actually delivering a product to users in the form of like things like Ethereum and whatnot. So we need to do that. That's the most important thing.
So it's sort of a bit of both. You can see we need to get to the point where people are actually using it, and then also be able to iteratively build in new research.
Yeah, because ultimately it's the things that get used by the most amount of people that just take off and dramatically kind of change the research direction. You need to be constantly getting user feedback for this technology, because you're going to just learn things based on how people operate with it. So I think it's absolutely critical that we get this to real people.
Yeah. Sebastian, did you?
Yeah, so from a research point of view, there's, I think, lots of work still to be done. I mean, like we have different people have different proposals for state channel constructions, and we have like shown, or we have like proven them secure in this UC model, but this is like just a very basic step, and we need to go like to an implementation. I mean, we need first to verify if actually our proofs are correct, because now we wrote them by hand. And Christina, of course, and Lisa, they're very good, and they probably verified them in detail. But still, it would be very good to have like these proofs machine verified, and then going to the next level to actually transfer this into a implementation and check for implementation bugs and so on. So this is like a very long step, like a way until we finally have really secure solution.
So you see the like provable security aspect of things being key in the development of this field, like whether or not we build in new features or whatever, like that kind of, can we prove that it actually works?
You want to answer?
Well, no, so there is this famous fight in the community, crypto community, is provable security good or bad?
You have to say cryptographic.
Cryptographic community. So I think like we come more from the theoretical side, but we are not like dogmatic about proofs, right? So we are not saying wait 5 years until we come up with nice models and nice lemmas and definitions, and then after we are done with this, we will let you implement, right? This is not our approach. We definitely believe that there should be interaction between us. Yes, there's plenty of work, and I think what we should definitely be careful is that everything that is really implemented in real life is proven secure, ideally verified. The proofs are verified. There is bad history in, like, for example, crypto protocols like SSL. That was designed a little bit ad hoc at the beginning, then it had lots of flaws. It resulted in a very complicated protocol because it was done in an ad hoc way without proper foundations. So I think this is where we could contribute to have nice models and so on. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to like fruitful collaboration with all practitioners.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Hands up? No? Okay.
Well, if we don't have any questions from the audience, I have a question for the audience. Presumably, the lack of questions means that this question is uncontentious, but it's unclear to me which direction it's uncontentious. So we've got an audience of people who are interested in layer 2 solutions. Maybe we all think that it's obvious that channelization is useful. Or maybe some of us think it's not even worth discussing. Which one is it?
So the question is, are state channels overkill?
Yeah, let's see a show of hands. Who thinks state channels? We won't put you on the spot. Who thinks state channels might be overkill? Might be a little bit overkill.
Is the blockchain overkill?
Oh. The question there is the blockchain overkill?
I didn't get one hand on that, and I thought I was pretty open with that.
So no one thought that.
You are asking a very specific audience, right? Maybe people who came here.
Well, I think we got our result. We got a hand over here.
You have a
That's
question?
good.
Hang on.
I think that in the future, everyone here is. Thank you. I think that in any case, you need to share an expensive resource. I mean, at least between two people. Then obviously, state channel will be the way to go because we'll have to send like a lot, every fraction of value, whatever you have to send. So a lot of transactions in a minute, every second, and whatever way the whole ecosystem takes, like if there be a network or not, there'll always be some additional cost to having more people involved in a system. So I think the very, very basic of it, just two people sharing a very expensive resource will always be, the state channel will be always the best way to go. So, but other than that, it depends what will be the fees in the future, what will be the fees for Raiden, for Lightning Network, and the cost of SGX or provers or whatever moon math will be involved in it.
So thank you. So,
do you guys have a good mental model for, particularly, I guess, in the payments use case, what will make sense, the trade-offs between on-chain, off-chain? Obviously, the capital requirements of payment channels likely mean you will use it for smaller amounts of money transfer than larger amounts. And to kind of add on to that, everybody likes to call state channel communication free and instant, but is that overselling? Will it be free? Probably not. How do you imagine it will be? When fees are involved, how will they be computed? My mental model is based off interest rates probably, but I'm curious to hear what the panel thinks.
I think this is a question to economists. Is any here with background with the? No, I think that this is a question we were asking ourselves. What is the price of locking money, for example? So, not being an expert in economics, my understanding was that I should look at what will be the inflation on Ethereum, on Ether, and since all this is risk-free. I mean, if you forget about risks software bugs or attacks or things like this, it's all risk-free. So blocking money for some period should more or less correspond to the inflation on the cost should correspond to inflation, and that's not very high because I read somewhere that I think according to Vitalik, the inflation on Ether should be between 0.5% and 2% a year. So if you translate it to how much it is one day, it's not that much. But that's my very superficial understanding of economics, so maybe someone will correct me.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. So I think any economist would be eager to say, no, it's not inflation, it's opportunity cost. And what's interesting is it looks like there are a lot of applications we're developing that are going to need capital. Kind of a general rule in crypto economics, even outside of state channels specifically, is there's a lot of mechanisms you can build where you have some misbehavior, something you want to discourage someone from doing, and the easy solution is you're going to have them make a bunch of deposits so that you can penalize them. And that means that the simple way or the lazy, not always lazy, but a little bit lazy way of solving crypto economic problems is just have a bunch of deposits. And this means that capital is actually in quite high demand. We look at all the different mechanisms that are popping up. So for example, the drive to improve the consensus layer on Ethereum, switch from proof of work to proof of stake. What does this involve? Deposits. We look at something like TrueBit, where you're going to instead of just doing computations and paying people for them, you're going to claim computations and then check them. What does this involve? Deposits. When we look at what we're doing in any kind of financial contract, where people are pitching blockchain as a risk-free or trust-free solution, the way that we make it risk-free or trust-free compared to traditional financial system is mostly with deposits. So when we start to look at things like stable coins, things like proof of stake, things like all these different things that people are interested in, it looks like there are quite a lot of things vying for capital. And the really interesting question is going to be, what is the average opportunity cost of capital in this environment? The balance of traditional economics has been to say that we'll basically try to pump most of our currencies full of a lot of free credit to lower the opportunity cost of capital, to kind of grease the wheels of everything. But it's not exactly clear how that'll work in decentralized economies where you don't have someone who's willing to make that specific trade-off or is in the power to make that specific trade-off. So I think it's an interesting open question.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to wrap it up with one final question. This final question is the only thing standing between everyone and free beer. So to each of the panelists, very quickly, what milestone would you like to see from the state channel community in the next year? Or what would you hope that the state channel community could achieve in like adoption or in like research breakthroughs or something? What would you like to see? Very quickly, like one sentence answer. What are you excited about? What do you hope will happen in the next year?
Yeah, I'd like to see a distributed application with like 100x times the users we've seen on anything like that's been popular in the past, like CryptoKitties, built entirely on state channels.
I'd like to see an interoperable standard. Like pretty much all these solutions we look at, payment channels, state channels, even across different blockchains, Lightning on Bitcoin, Raiden on Ethereum, the Doge Ethereum bridge, whatever it is. We want to connect these things up. Of course we want to connect things up. We have research on how to do cross-chain atomic trading. We have research on how to do all these things. We're going to want to connect everything up. And it's clear that we're not all running the same network. So we need some kind of standard. And I would love to see within a year that we have some kind of clear standard that as long as we have some kind of specific adapter or some specific API that everyone can implement in each of their software, that there's some way we can hook this all up. That would be amazing.
Okay, so you were asking about research breakthroughs. So the research breakthroughs are unpredictable, right? So I can, of course, say I hope for a research breakthrough, and period. That's it. So I will not talk about research, about implementations. I think on a practical level, I'm really looking forward to how it will look, this implementation of Perun that Bosch is doing. And yes, I agree that at some point we should converge to some common standard, right? So that all these systems can talk to each other.
Yeah, thank you. Sebastian?
So yeah, I also agree with Stefan essentially that it's very hard to predict research breakthroughs. So we have some good ideas for the next breakthroughs that hopefully we'll make. But let's see. So in general, like also, I mean, it would be very nice to have some more implementations, and like in particular, I think it would be very good if we collaborate like more intensively with like people who implement these kind of solutions. So now we already started to do this with Bosch and with L4 and other people, but it would be really cool to intensify this and have maybe some kind of workshop where we can meet and discuss this at a very technical level.
Yeah, so I will be happy even just with payments. So if you have some substantial network that takes the load of the scalability issues on chain and actually really works well, and a lot of people are really doing off-chain payments in the next year, it would be great.
Okay, thanks everyone. Can we have a round of applause for the panelists?